Okay, so we are going to continue on with chapter 22. Last time we went over allopatric speciation. This time we're going to go over sympatric speciation. So, difference here, allopatric speciation was based on geographic isolation. So we had some type of barrier prohibiting the two species from meeting, and due to that barrier, over time, we had two different species actually form. So sympatric speciation, this is going to be based on reproductive isolation. What this means is they can go right next to one another, but something is prohibiting them from producing viable offspring. And what I mean by this, guys, is they still might make offspring. So we still might get, some kind of offspring, some kind of child off of the mating. However, that offspring might have decreased fertility. It might not be able to reproduce at all. So we're going to go over some different things here with reproductive isolation. We'll go over polyploidy, habitat differentiation, and then sexual selection. So let's start off with polyploidy. And if you remember, we went over like diploid and haploid a while ago. When we're talking about diploid and haploid, this referred to our number of chromosomes we had. So haploid was one set of each of our chromosomes, or one of each. Diploid was two of each chromosome, so we had a pair of each. Polyploidy is where we have extra sets of chromosomes. So for our cells, we want to be diploid. If we are more than diploid, that's not good, okay? 2 is like the perfect number for our normal body, our normal somatic cells. More than that, we are going to have some kind of genetic abnormality. So different types of polyploidy. The first one is autopolyploid. So this is just where they have more than two of a chromosome or chromosomes, and those are from the same species. So it's two species mating, and we got too many chromosomes. So nothing too complicated there. All right, we have some kind of division where we get too many, and you guys can see down here we have too many chromosomes. All right. The next one is called allopolyploid. So this is a species with multiple sets of chromosomes, but it's derived from different species. So the last one, autopolyploid, they're coming from the same species, so same species is mating. This one, allopolyploid, different species are mating. Okay? If we produce an individual that is an allopolyploid, they cannot breed with either of the parent species. So they're not going to produce any kind of fertile offspring. All right, so this is just, it's almost the same as the previous picture, but we have two different species coming in. And then we still do have errors during chromosome separation. A lot of this stuff, guys, with polyploidy actually doesn't apply to humans, animals that much. Most of it's going to apply to plants. That's the big one. So most of the stuff we're going to see in plants rather than animals. Okay, so when we talk about a ecological niche, so what a niche is this is going to be all of our interactions between one species and every other member of the community that it lives in. So this is going to be like anything with competition, anything with predation, anything that's like parasitism, meaning one organism using another organism for good, but the other organism is harmed. And then lastly, it's going to be mutualism too. So two organisms working together for mutual benefit. It's also going to be the abiotic factors in that community. What we mean by abiotic factors is non-living factors. Could be like soil's not living. Air is not living. Rocks are not living. But some of these species might use these things for a benefit. Picture a rock. I mean, air is pretty every organism needs air. But a rock, some organisms might use it to hide so they don't get preyed upon. All right. In the past, we talked about sexual selection, and this is just one member of a species selecting a mate of that species. So it's just what characteristics are favorable to that individual. Now, in the animal community, excluding us, we would hope that these are the characteristics, these are the traits that are needed for survival, they're needed for reproduction, they're needed to fulfill the basic necessities of life. Obviously, if an animal can't walk to get, food and water and things like that, those are not going to be good traits we want to pass on. So hopefully those traits would get weeded out by sexual selection, and the organism that is trying to mate would be like, hey, I really don't want to pass those on. All right. But this is why there's such a high rate, this slide here, this is why there's such a high rate of sympatric speciation in a lake. We're going to go over this example with cichlid fish in Lake Victoria. So what can happen is we can have a single fish and it can give rise to a bunch of different fish. So let me go over the cichlid example here. We have two different types of cichlids here, and I'm just going to go over the normal light one here. So some of our fish might prefer this green colored, but one day we get a new species of cichlids coming and it's like this blue orange color here. And some of the, did you see the new fish that came out? It's like a new thing in stores. Did you see that? The fish might be attracted to that one, but some others still might be attracted to the green one up here. Over time, what's going to happen is we're going to have speciation where these two are going to continue to mate, some of them with the green, some of them with the blue, but probably not intermix. So we're not going to have one fish mating with both of them to produce babies. So over time, we're going to have two completely different species of cichlids, and that's exactly what happened here. All right, so for allopatric speciation, that was one we went over last time. So geographic isolation restricted gene flow between our populations. So we had some kind of barrier, which means we couldn't exchange the genes between the two parts where the barrier was separating. Reproductive isolation, so no geographic barrier separating them. Ways this can arise is natural selection, genetic drift, or, like we just went over, sexual selection between a species. Okay. So we're good here. I already went over that one. Let's go over hybrid zones. So what a hybrid zone is pretty much an area where two different species may meet in the wild. So what's going to happen is some of these species, they might try to mate, all right? Usually it doesn't happen, to be honest. Two different species aren't going to be like, oh, hey, that other species there looks nothing like me is looking very attractive today. Usually that doesn't happen. But every now and again, we do have species that are close together with respect to their chromosomes, and they are able to mate. So different ways that a hybrid zone can occur, guys. We're just going to have two areas. The species are going to live on opposite areas. There's not going to be a geographic barrier in the middle, so they can get to pretty much the middle ground or somewhere in the middle ground. It's like a band, pretty much, an imaginary band on the land or in water. And they're going to come together and they're pretty much going to, mate in that area. Here's an example of one right here. All right. You guys can see that we have between our yellow-bellied toads here and our fire-bellied toads, we have this area right here in the middle where they can meet. All right, and in that area they're gonna reproduce. Now, the ones out here, they're living over here, and the ones on this side, yeah, they're probably never going to make it to the hybrid zone, so there's not going to be much gene flow between those individuals. But the ones in the middle, we are going to have some gene flow as long as they can produce viable offspring. So with respect to hybrids, guys, and I'm talking about hybrid organisms, two species coming together and producing a species that is a combination of both of the parent species. But hybrids usually have reduced fitness compared to the parent species. Reason being is we are putting together DNA. We are putting together chromosomes that really wasn't meant to go together. So when closely related species meet in these zones, we have three outcomes. We have reinforcement, we have fusion, and we have stability. So we'll go through all of them real quick. All right, and here's just a picture of just what we went over there. We have originally a population. They went through divergent evolution, became two different species, but now these two different species are meeting in this hybrid zone where they can once again mate. All right, and here's, like I said, our possible outcomes there. All right, so our first one, let me try to move myself out of the way here a little bit. Our first one is called reinforcement. So reinforcement is when the hybrids are less fit than the parent species. So what's going to happen over time with this? If reinforcement occurs, we're given that reinforcement is occurring. If reinforcement occurs in the hybrid zone, it's going to decrease the gene flow between the two different populations because the offspring are less fit than the parents. Second one, this is going to be fusion. In fusion, the hybrids are just as fit as the parents. So with respect to survival, with respect to reproduction, it's going to be the same as the parents. This does increase gene flow between our two species. Okay, so this is only going to occur, guys, when the two species produce a large number of fertile offspring. These fertile hybrids are going to continue to reproduce over the course of many generations. All right, and what could happen at the end of fusion, if this goes on for many generations, is those two species can actually become one. Now, that's given that we have, again, a large number of these hybrid offsprings being produced, and also we would have to have a decrease in the number of our individual species mating together. So we want to have more of the two species intermingling and creating these hybrids. So here's an example, once again, of our cichlids coming together and producing a hybrid. Okay. So last one is stability. So with stability, our fit hybrids, they do continue to be produced. Overall, guys, our end of stability is going to be, we're going to have our two separate species still thriving, still being produced, still producing fertile offspring. And we're also going to have our hybrid species in that hybrid zone continuing to be produced. So how is this different than fusion? Well, fusion, at the end, we're probably going to get rid of those individual species on each side. So they're coming together and we're only going to have this hybrid species. In stability, we're still going to have those species on the outside, and we're also going to have our third species, the hybrid species, on the inside. All right, so the last section here, guys, this is just finishing up with speciation, all right? So we're just going to go over some basics just to tie up the loose ends of speciation, and your book goes over, there's few questions concerning speciation, like how long does it take a new species to form, and how close does the DNA need to be in order for a hybrid viable offspring to be produced. So there is no real set amount of DNA that has to be the same. There's also no set time, but we can study the fossil record, we can study data with morphology, and we can study the DNA in order to try to at least get a good hypothesis for what's going on here. So, punctuated equilibria. So, let me explain to you that first here. So, what's going to happen, guys, is if we have this model of punctuated equilibria, there's going to be a contrasting model, and it's called a gradual change. So they are going to be completely different than one another. So what is our difference in between punctuated equilibria and the gradualism model? Well, so for punctuated equilibria, what this says is that a new species accumulates most of its unique features that are different than the previous species right when it comes into existence. The gradualism model is this: whenever the species is changing and diverging into two different species, we are going to have small changes slowly happen over time, and then later on, what's going to happen at the end of our speciation, we are going to have the end of all of our changes. So it's small changes over time. It's the gradual model, right? It gradually changes over time. Here's a picture of each of them here. You could see the first one. We have this butterfly here, and it diverged, went through divergent evolution, and there it is. So this color of butterfly right here is the same as this color of butterfly over here. This in between is just time elapsing. This is our punctuated equilibrium model. All right, so nothing changes. Once speciation occurs, all of our new traits are right there. Gradual model down here, this is going to be slow changes, and then in the end, we get to that species, whatever that change might be. All right, which one is correct? Well, the punctuated equilibrium model is how things happen. Why? Why would it not be the gradualism model? Well, what happens is speciation occurs because of a need for the environment, based on the environment. So if an organism is not well adapted to the environment, it's not going to slowly change. In that time where it's slowly changing, yeah, it's actually going to go extinct. So we need to quickly get through speciation so that the new species that come out are going to be well adapted to that changing environment. So here's an example. All right, obviously sunflowers, they're not supposed to be in sand dunes, but we have a hybrid here. So speciation occurred with the sunflower in order to make it survive in that area. And then here are some changes in the DNA. We're not going to go over this, guys, just of the sunflower. All right, back to cichlids. So we're going to talk about the other thing. The other question was, how long does speciation occur? And when does it continue? Well, it continues based on the changes in the environment. All right, so, and how long does it take? It's all different times, guys, okay? There's no real way we can judge it. And we could find out, say, the fossils and things like that to determine how long it took. But for another speciation event to occur, we can't guesstimate on how long that's going to take. All right, but it could be, and here it says, 4,000 years, that's how long they estimate the cichlids took, to beetles, 40 million years. So big difference there. All right, so next question, guys, how many genes change when a new species is formed? So when we have speciation occurring, we need to, and this is the green area right here, we need to change at least one gene. And in changing that one gene, that gene has to affect at least one phenotype in that species. If we do not change one phenotype, we do not have speciation. All right, so even though the gene changed, if the phenotype isn't changing, it really doesn't matter. All right, in some species, very few genes are changed. In some species, you know, we can change a lot. We can have a whole lot of different phenotypes come about. And here's just some examples here. You guys can read them. I'm not going to waste your time because you guys can read. All right, but here are some flowers just with all different colors. And those colors, why are they like that? Well, probably to attract different insects, different flies, different bugs, those different, bees, those types of things. Those pollinators that I'm talking about are going to have different preferences. So if we have a bunch of different colors, those pollinators are going to go to the color of their choice. And one of these is no more better for the pollinators compared to the other. All right. So overall, guys, this was the end of our macroevolution thing. This is bringing about new species. All right. Now, in bringing about new species, don't forget we are also going to have the extinction of different species as well. But anyway, so that's the end of chapter 22, guys. You can continue working on your reading guide. Have a good rest of your day.